Playtime is an interesting thing. For a comedy, it doesn't seem to hold a populist appeal at this point in time, and apparently, it wasn't a hit fan either. Audiences did not take to it, though critics would in the years subsequent to its release. It is obvious to anyone with an interest in the medium that Playtime is a filmic triumph, although it is too easy to imagine more general audiences feeling impatient, unengaged, and wishing for more overt gags per minute. Playtime was more about the existentialism than the belly laughs, and whilst those are contained within as well, it appears to be Tati's second priority. There are only maybe a couple hundred films at most I admire more so than this one. It's at the creative stage for Guillem's Brazil, which is a film where I admire even less films more so than. If that film was Kafka for the teenagers, Playtime is Kafka for the children too young to gauge either. But even the children might find themselves impatient with playtime. For all the visual gags, the lack of dialogue or a clear story might throw people off. This is a shame, although I'm attempting to rectify some of this here. Perhaps they can see the appeal of playtime in this format without having to sit through sequences of silence beyond the loud sound effects. Cutesy, innocent Hulo wandering around about this unforgivably confusing industrial ecosystem or physical comedy antics, which they may or may not even appreciate in the first place. Possibly the peak of slapstick-inspired film humour since the silent visionaries, Tati is deservedly celebrated by the enthusiasts, although the fact that most people I've met probably wouldn't enjoy it did occur to me when viewing it last. And sadly, it isn't just a sign of oversaturated, overstimulated, or generally impatient times we live in. As I shared earlier, Playtime was far from a popular hit at the time of its release. The fact is, most individuals aren't interested in composition alone, and most people are put off, I think, a lot are at least, by films trying to be cute and innocent, especially in a European context. The Anglosphere has it in for cutesy European stuff as they see it. They don't see why this brand of media ought to be considered sophisticated. By the snobby elites in Europe, it isn't, but they don't know that. And they think that people in the English speaking world only appreciate such works because they consider themselves to be special, unique, sensitive, or cleverer than most. I have to admit, some of that European so called cutesy stuff has put me off too. I'm not a fan of schmaltz or sentimentality, and some of what we see in Playtime can be confused for this, although I don't and have never felt this way about it. Playtime is too aware of this world's miseries and cruelties, even on just a modest scale, to be overly sentimental or saccharine. Hulo encounters too much bad luck, the wider world is dismissive of him, a cotton and leather donning older man in a jungle of steel and glass. He is more interested in his own happiness than the appeasement of others, the wider machine. And his liberation psychologically breeds the contempt of others who feel trapped and obligated to serve the system, thinking Hulo has taken a child's attitude regarding the modern world. Conversely, it is Hulo who is brave enough to stand his own, and the denizens of these systems who have taken the coward's way out, claiming to care about money and sustenance is an excuse to justify the pursuit of hollow status. And these citizens must know that deep down, whether admitted to anyone, including themselves, or not. I have to admit, I prefer the film set during the day, prior to it being about this single, very long, extended sequence following the party, so the closing portion set again during the day is a welcome respite. The fact is, I can't imagine my parents caring for this, I can't imagine any of my significant others ever caring for this. Most people seem to appreciate it with their heads, but not their hearts, if they do sort of more casually appreciate it, let's say. I've been too dejected by society to not feel a resonance with this film. I was always one of these people whose belittlement was just accepted. We live in a world where targeting and nastiness is supposedly frowned upon, but that's not totally true. For certain people, selected people, miserable treatment is not accepted. But certain people, yeah, who cares what happens to them? The standards are arbitrary, usually related to money or physical attractiveness, but you'll notice, some people everyone defends from bullying, and some people just say, hey, you need to accept it, that's how it is. I'll tell you all a brief story. Teenage AOD was an outcast, but then 18-ish-year-old AOD was briefly considered very handsome by a surprising number of girls in his grade. Now, whilst 18 to 19-year-old AOD decided to enjoy his newfound physical appreciation by girls, the next year, at university, people who didn't know him yet, he only felt disgust and contempt for anyone being newly nice to him from that high school, and just took the opportunity to spread vitriol and resentment to all those people who would have been nastier to him over the few prior years. I may or may not regret that in retrospect. Well, I do and I don't. To be fair, those people can go to hell. The university people mostly ended up not being much better. They like you initially for looking half decent, but they'll eventually hate you for not dressing to impress them, posturing fake politics to impress them, just generally not existing to impress others. When rich people and the spawn of rich people think you aren't trying to impress them, they take it very, very personally. And I think fundamentally that's why the people in this film appear to hold contempt for the effortlessly likable Monsieur Hulot. He is polite, he's enthusiastic, curious, and fun. What traits could be more desirable as a likable companion? Apparently, the ability to make money, to embody superficial priorities, and one's ability to deceive and manipulate. Not being able to manifest these traits, Hulot was not welcome in that post-war ideologically capitalist in reaction to the Second World socialist calamities at that point, shipwreck. And sadly, I think many admirers of Hulot and Tati from beyond the screen do not feel entirely welcome in this world either. In a world of obnoxious and bullying Trump supporters, of cliquey, contemptible high society pseudo leftists, of indifferent, binging consumers of booze or junk food, and the plutocrats whose loyalty is to the prospective highest bidder, the works of Jacques Tati hold no importance to most viewers, but will be extremely special to those who reject all of that venom. If Playtime had been directed by your neighbour, no matter who you are, or a friend or sibling of yours, you would think it is genius. Wow, one person chose to compose and did all of this. In the current world, wherein people just expect the contents of their screen to pander to and entertain them, not considering how it was made or what it is even doing, why would they care for the films of Jacques Tati? The fact is, most people want their screen entertainment to gratify them like potato chips and cans of beer after an irritating day of work, and anything attempting to be more than base entertainment bothers them or bores them. The fact is that Playtime is targeting that horrible system which entraps them and prevents them from fully enjoying and appreciating films like Jacques Tati's masterwork, Playtime.